What's good, you guys? Good morning. Hitting you with that November trade review, going over my best to worst trades for a month. Let's just get right into it. So, as I said in my video before this, it's another record month for me and the milestone month. So, ending the month with 3901 US dollars, which ends up being $5,054 Canadian. So, very strong month for me. Let's see what I did in October. I finished October up 2,300, which was 3,000. So added a nice 2 grand on there, and I'm very happy with the results. Of course, I could have did a lot of things better, but given how things went at the beginning of the month, I'm not mad at that. And what I mean is, at the beginning of the month, the first week we had the elections, and coming off the end of October where the QQQ was just completely dumping, I was having a lot of bad days. So usually I dip by the QQQ in the morning, I look for morning panics, and I build into a position, and I go for that pop back to VWAP. And what had happened was, before November came along, we had this period where there was just a lot of down days, a lot of big red days, so a lot of big dump days, and I wasn't really used to that. So I had to do a lot of research and kind of refine my strategy a bit, look at the results and react accordingly. But in November, we got this crazy strength, even though I was expecting the market to dump with all the craziness that was happening during the election. So I was just really apprehensive about taking any positions, even though there was quite a few opportunities during election week. And again, my psychology was kind of out of whack from the ending off October. I ended off October with the red week, so I just wasn't trying to play around. My confidence was a bit down, just from a play the dip buys were working earlier in the month suddenly slipping from my hands. Starting off the month, we'll just look at the QQQ because that's the main one that I play. And the first couple trades, I was getting faked out. You see 2 losses here, and I'm getting faked out on these dips. Again, on the next one right here, faked out once again. So these would have worked well, but I was just trying to cut my losses quickly, and I was just pretty scared of getting dumped on and then ending up with a bigger loss than I intended. So I was definitely off my game, because usually I would have scaled in, looked at how it reacted, let the chart play out, and look if it's actually a fake out or if it's actually a real dump. So the first week with the QQQ, I actually had lost money, but by the Friday of that week, the 6th, I started to find my groove again. So on the 6th, I took a loss because it looked to be basing here after a morning panic. Then it went down further, but then I caught the real bottom, and it ended up being net on the QQQ for that day. But nonetheless, the first week of November was pretty much a scratch week. This wasn't the number at the time, because I had some trades from that week that I was holding that I made money from later on the month. So when I have trades that I execute, let's say in the first week, and I don't actually sell for profit till the third week, the profits from the third week will be added to the first week in trade review. So this was like -4. So that was pretty much a scratch week for me, and it definitely sucked. Gross profits, I was up 212. But then you had the second week come along. So on the 6th was when I finally kind of started finding my groove a bit, started getting a bit more confidence, started taking positions. So the next week came around, I'm like, yo, in October you had a week where like you made 2 grand in the week, and you started killing it on the QQQ. So like, what happened? Found my bearings, and then the week after that, I made 1,700, and in Canada, that's 2,200. That's like my goal pretty much. That's more than my minimum goal. I mean, my minimum goal is 400 Canadian a day, so I could have a 6-figure income. So I came back guns blazing in that week. Then the next week was a bit of a rough patch compared to the first week. Still making money, and then the last week was even slower week. So what happened in last week is we had Thanksgiving, and then we had Black Friday, so it was a half-day trading session. But pretty much what happened during those last 2 weeks there, I was starting to struggle with my dip buys. What was happening was I was taking early entries and just having it dump on me and then not sizing it at the right time. So I would start the mornings like down like over 2K unrealized, and mentally it really sucked. And I had a few of these days happen to me in the third week of November, and then I had a few more days happen in the last week of November. So it was really throwing me off because the dips are just, some of them are, because what was happening is that I'd go for the dip and rip. Sometimes I'd miss a dip and rip, so I'd take the next panic at previous lows or looking at a previous support level, and then it just goes way further than I intended. I'd have to keep taking paper cut losses on the way down, but then I'd be sizing up more and more as it kept going down, and those paper cuts would become just big losses. So I'd be down like 2K just to finish the day up 400. And just for my comfort and just for my mental space, it just doesn't feel good at all. Like, I'm trying to avoid that, trying to avoid being down 2K, being down over 1K, just so I could come by the end of the day making 400. Like, it feels like I'm in a war, to be honest. Like, I'm just going back and forth in this battle, and like, if I'm only going to end the day up 300-400, honestly, it's not even worth it. Like, clearly something has to be done to my strategy. So you can see here I had 2 red days in these last 2 weeks of November, and it was mainly at the beginning of both weeks where I was having these mornings where I was just deep in the hole. So this trade here, I only ended the trade up 31. But if you look at my executions, I was getting my shit rocked all the way down. Like, failed bounce, failed bounce, failed bounce, multiple failed bounces. And I'm just, cutting away my position, eating these losses. And then we get these big bounces, like saved by the bounce. And the thing that I want to change about that is I don't want to be sizing in here and then stuck having to recover like 1 to 2K, even more. Sometimes I think I was up like down like 2.5K. Like, it's cool that I was able in this time period to make back $2,000, but it isn't even worth it. Like, I think for my next step to level up, I want to be able to, even if I start cutting my losses here, but just not so early, and just reading the chart better, reading the level 2 better. So I've really been owning in on my data, tracking the dips, tracking the number of successful dips, the times that it reclaims VWAP, the uptrends, just so I could feel more confident in my entries. And on this red day here, and this is a Monday, this was like such a crappy start to the week. Same thing, started to take this position early on the panic, then it just gets completely wrecked. So I'm thinking this is gonna be it. This bounce doesn't end up being all that successful, falls apart. The difference with here though is that I was getting a bit greedy. So because I was taking losses on the way down, I really wanted to nail the profits. Because even though I had taken these paper cuts, because I had caught the bottom and I was kind of in and out, scalping around, core size, at this point, if I had sold, I would have been up like maybe 250 to 300 on the day after the earlier losses. And I didn't take it because I wanted more. Because after going through all that, I wanted not just my money back, I wanted to really bring home the profits. That being said, these types of days where there's just this massive panic, I do factor this into my strategy where this is going to happen. So this is not, as of yet, it's not a frequent occurrence. That being said, when I saw the bottom here, this should have been the cue to just really go hard with the size. And that's the problem with when you take all these paper cuts and all these losses on the way down, it screws up your psychology so that when the real opportunity presents itself, you're just so beaten down that you don't even take it. And then here, even though I finished with the green day and the trade was 300, again, I'm spending my whole morning getting destroyed early on and trying to make that back. If I had started scaling in here, I could reduce the impact of those paper cut losses and thereby increase my net gain. And it's the biggest problem I have. I still have this problem where I scale in early on dip buys, and I really need to do something about that. Nonetheless, Because of those, because of being in situations where I was taking these big losses, incidentally, I also ended up having some of my best trades ever. So on the 18th, when I caught the bottom and I rode the rip all the way up, and that day happened to be another day where I had started off the day taking a huge loss before that on the way down. Again, just going in too early, having a dump on me, and then having to recover that. Which means I also took a sizable loss. But still, that my biggest loss of the month being 450 is reasonable, given that my biggest gain was 621. And when you look at the profits, like there's a bunch of gains that are 490, 400, 300, a bunch. And then when you look at the losses, I have 450, a couple 200, then the rest are negative 100 and negative 80. But obviously it doesn't tell the whole story, because there was times where I was down unrealized over $2,000. So that does need to be taken into consideration. Also, full disclosure, I did have borrow fees from some crappy positions I ended up in. Borrow fees ended up being like 33 Canadian, and then my some of my bag holds and some of my swings were 18. So it was very marginal. It has very small impact on my overall profits. But okay, so now let's get into some of the shorts I took. So back in the summer, I had this problem where I was just shorting breakouts, thinking they were extended when they weren't, and getting my ass handed to me. So I haven't been, too heavy in the short game for a while. But when the EVs blew up, I looked at the history. I'm like, okay, these things, like the EV sector, like solo, F-Cell, like they'll have their moments, but then they usually just come back down. That didn't happen this time. That as we saw, like the EV sector after the Biden win, it just completely blew up. Luckily, I only had 100 shares of solo and 100 shares of F-Cell, because I'm a lot smarter than I was in the summer, so I only take small positions on these kind of speculative shorts, and just haven't felt the burn before. With solo, what I've been doing is, I've just my pride has gotten the best of me. I had the 100 shares short. I just been scaling out five shares at a time. Now solo is actually coming back down though, so now I could actually start scaling out bigger size. Hopefully, maybe we could break even for the rest. I had shorted it here because I just thought that the multi-day breakout fail is gonna come back down, but then started curling back up and just fucking ripped. And the thing about when you take these shorts and you put yourself in the position, you just hold on to it and you don't just cut the losses, you miss out on the opportunities to take the breakouts. And that's what I need to realize, like big picture. Okay, you could take the loss. Let's say you even take up to $200 loss. Imagine going in with proper size when it breaks out here, and capitalizing on the numerous panics that are going to happen on the way up, and then shorting it on the backside and getting a way higher average, because now I can't add to my short. My average is too low. I'd have to add a lot of size in order to bring that average all the way up here where I could get a reasonable profit. F-Cell, same thing. F-Cell ended up going further than I expected. Like, holy shit. I shorted at 5 and that thing ended up past 11. And it's still holding up. That one's pretty surprising. And then I still have a bag hold. I remember when I was taking those OTC breakouts in the summer, I was having a problem where, like, if I had only like 300-400 in the position and it dumped on me, I just bag hold it, because I'm like, it's $300-400. I still have like 15K in my account, whatever. And unfortunately, I did that for BRTX. It's obviously irresponsible. I was holding it for the gap up. It completely dumped. And even though I had sold 10,000 in my position pre-market into the gap up just to get size off, which was good. But I was really expecting, I'm like, oh, this has potential to be a good multi-day breakout. Just completely dumped, and now it's all the way back down here in this consolidation. So it is what it is. And then another example of a short where I just kind of took speculative and I didn't even play it properly. I shorted this right here. Completely ignored that this was a big key multi-day breakout. I was just looking at this section right here, very completely ignorant to the big picture. And as you can see, it just starts speeding up. And I should have cut it down here. Another example where just cut the loss, take the, whether it's 200-300, once you find your bearings, when it starts to speed up, you could capitalize on the long side. And then when it does dump, you capitalize on the short, you hammer in size, and then you get the red day. You get the overextended play here. And then after it dumps close to the breakout level, or it dumps to a key support level, and then you go in for the bounce. And I saw this all play out because it happened yesterday. But that's December, so. But still, it's important to know. You know, don't let your pride and ego force you in a position and miss out on ideal positions later on because you're pigeonholed in this position, expecting. And the thing is, when you put yourself in these positions, like, the best you get out of it, risk reward wise, is like break even or maybe a couple dollars profit. So just take the loss, and like, as long as your position isn't too big, you know, just take the loss, even if it's a little bigger. Like, it sucks. You just can't let it get to you mentally, and you have to play the chart, be rational about it, and look at what the chart is telling you, and just trust your strategy. Okay, so one thing I also want to mention is, to wrap up the video, I do look at gross profits as well, because it's interesting to know what I made if I didn't give my money away to commissions. So I made $5,670, which is seven grand Canadian, which is crazy. And lots of my money went away to trading commissions for options. It's when you take sides with options, like I was doing, like a lot of those mornings where you could see I was scaling in and getting wrecked on those dumps, just adding size. The more size I added, the more I was paying in options. You could see the commissions on them. Like, for 5 contracts, that's $4 in commission. 23 contracts, $14 in commission. So I'm getting this trade at gross $5.99. My commissions was $2.85. I made $6.82 and paid $60. So that wasn't even bad. It's when you start taking sides and scaling out bit by bit that it really screws you up. Here, where I lost $4.21. Well, actually, that wasn't even bad either. But it's when you go and you look at the daily that you really see. So net, $195 the red day, $230 red day. Gross, $240 green day, and I'm only 72 red on this day. So those commissions really make a difference. And I think it's important to also look at your gross profits, because even though your net is what you walk away with in your final profits, the gross tells you how well you're actually doing. Because let's say you're taking 100 shares and you go for 2 cents profit, and you make that 2 cents, but you paid $1 buying the 100 shares and $1 selling, so you didn't make nothing. Your net profits, you'd be at zero. If you look at the gross, you were right about that trade. So it's important to know that, especially when you're starting small, because the commissions will have a bigger impact on you when you have a smaller account. So just always look at that. It'll help with your confidence as well. And then another thing that I want to show you guys, just to wrap up the video, is now we're looking at year to date, and I just wanted to show you what's possible. Like, I'm not even close to where I want to be, but man, I was in the gutter, like, at one point in this year. Like, I was down close to 15 grand at one point on the year. And as you can see, I just been grinding my ass up. Right now, down 5 grand in the year, and I was getting demolished. Like, it's crazy when you show up to the market every day, you keep up with the analytics, what can be done, versus when you just jump in and you want the money before you even want to learn. And I did have quite a rough start to the year. The first half of the year was terrible, to be honest, but I'm glad to be on the right track. And that's all my thoughts for November. Hope your November went well. Thing is, I'm not even I made so much mistakes, and so I'm looking forward to December, closing the year strong. You know, going in on getting better, always getting better at those dips. And I'm not even just taking dips for the QQQ, going in for the clear OTC breakouts, OTC first red days, the bounce patterns, and all the patterns that I've grown accustomed to since being in the Tim Sykes program. And then just one more thing, that I also wanted to say is that, so if you look at my profits from the QQQ on the month, it was 3,400. Most of my profits came from the QQQ. So what I wanted to say about that is, if you find a ticker, large cap, that you're really familiar with and you really know its story, don't be afraid to focus on that, and then just use other tickers that you may not be as familiar with for wallet pattern plays, where you're sizing down. And I found that this has helped a lot. Just studying the QQQ and focusing on its movement every day, how it's reacting to the news. And I'm not big on the fundamentals, but I keep that in mind. And then looking at the chart plays out, it's helped me a lot. I have a lot more confidence when I'm trading. And then I've even have more confidence now also in OTCs. Even though I'm playing OTCs less, I find it now, since a lot of my profits from the QQQ, when I get off the QQQ and look at the OTCs or look at the listed, I'm really looking for better setups. And then if I'm taking losses, I'm sizing down, since I put more attention into the QQQ. So just one thing I wanted to add. This video ended up being a lot longer than I intended, but just wanted to get a lot of my thoughts out there. Hope your month went well. Let's finish the year strong. Be back soon.
Day, I ain't go outside today, I ain't go outside for days. I've been smoking purple haze, I've been hurting real weight on my shoulders, can't take no more, can't fake, smile away.